And it's a very good afternoon to the Sportzfan Radio panel, and special guest with us today after many years out of the side, Daniel Eade. Very good afternoon to you.
Well, Professor, I'm just like you and John Farnham. I always come back.
Good to see you. And the reason we got you back on is that one of your favourite areas of sports expertise, basketball, the NBA draft just completed this week.
Yeah, probably one of the most fun days, Professor, because everyone has hope when it's NBA draft day, but also made so much bigger this year because for all the Australian basketball fans, Warwick Giddey's son, Josh Giddey, was taken by the Oklahoma City Thunder with the 6th pick, and we'll have another Aussie in the NBA next year.
Was that a surprise that he went so high in the draft?
Well, there was a lot of buzz that he was going to go at number 7. Now, Andrew Bogut and Andrew Gaze said the same thing on a podcast just the week before. And then a couple of days before, Kevin O'Connor, who's one of the draft experts at The Ringer, he had him going number 7 to Golden State. So let's just say I was able to find a little bit of money, and I put a bit of a bet on Giddey going between 6 and 9. So I was able to celebrate with a Shiraz.
I see that his sister plays just up the road as well from Oklahoma, so it'll be a good little family spot there for them.
Well, it's a very, very big basketball family. You know, Father Warwick played with Andrew and played with Dave Simmons too in the 90s, and also Josh Giddey's mother too played in the WNBL.
They weren't going to have jockeys then, those kids.
So I think Josh they listed him at 6'8". Not bad, is it?
Runt.
I was surprised at him standing next to his old man the other day, Daniel, the difference in height, whereas Warwick wasn't a guard, was he? He was a forward, wasn't he?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you'd probably say Warwick was probably more of a small forward.
Yep.
Renowned for his defensive tenacity.
Fiery temper would have been better, wouldn't it?
Well, someone has to play defense when you're playing with Andrew Gaze and Leonard Copeland, so he was able to kind of keep the Tigers a little bit respectable at one end.
Now, I see that his parents actually made it to the NBA draft. Daniel, how did they possibly get out of Australia, and what was the reason?
I have absolutely no idea. You're allowed to ask for special circumstances?
Yeah, special consideration.
Special consideration. They must have asked for special consideration.
Well, didn't Matt Damon got in here, didn't he, on his own private jet or something, and everyone was carrying on?
Yeah, did he come out to visit you and spend a couple of weeks with you?
Yeah, that's right. Disinfected everything here.
Now, Daniel, number 1 pick in the draft to the Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham. Was that a surprise?
It wasn't a surprise, Professor, but I suppose one thing that I might be a little surprised about is how much he was the certainty, because there was a little bit of a buzz coming up in the days leading up to the draft that when he went and worked out with Detroit, his workout wasn't that good. And Jalen Green, who was the number 2 pick, actually had by far the better workout. But Detroit probably took what they considered to be the sure thing. And if you're a general manager, you won't get fired for taking the sure thing.
Now, 2 of the top 10 picks didn't come the traditional way through to being selected in the draft. They came through the G League Ignite. For the viewers who don't know about that, what's behind setting that up, and is it a better pathway than college?
Well, I suppose it's really set up to give players an opportunity who maybe don't want to go to college somewhere to play for a year. So it's really kind of like a stopgap for them. Now, of course, Jalen Green went number 2 to Houston, and people will rave about him until the cows come home. But when you look down at the second selection, Jonathan Kaminga, who was taken number 7, a lot of people who know a lot more than I do, Professor, no one really says anything nice about him. And people really point out how lazy he is, yet he was still the number 7 pick in the draft and taken by Golden State. And the question will remain, will he stay with Golden State? Or will Golden State look to move him on before the season starts?
Yeah, Daniel, the interesting thing nowadays, obviously, college basketball, you may be able to make more money in college basketball, which you haven't been able to say in recent years, because now with name, image, and likeness, and the student athletes able to make money for uses of their social media or their popularity. I've seen, college kids now, football players starting to sign sponsorship deals or name, image, and likeness deals with car dealerships. So given the limitations that you have going into the G League and the financial limitations, it may be more lucrative now to go into college, which is strange.
What might be really interesting too is if someone's actually a standout in college and does get very lucrative offers, when you see in basketball people do the one and done, will it actually keep some guys around in college a little bit longer? Will they maybe want to play maybe an extra year just to kind of cash in on this opportunity while they can before they turn pro?
Yeah, and it'd be interesting also, obviously the NBA has been looking at their sit out a year, or you have to wait a year before you come into the NBA draft. It'll be interesting to see now, as there's been talk of eliminating that rule, if that expedites that process as well. And
then we're just going to be right back to where they were like 25 years ago when they said they're not going to do this anymore and they're going to change it all up again.
Yeah, LeBron and Kobe seem to be okay with it.
So Daniel, given the different systems now that players are going into the draft, do you have a feel for the average age of the draftees?
I think right now some of these players are too young. Everyone's drafted on where their potential is going to be in the next 4 to 10 years. And it's like, okay, he's 18 now, but you know what? We think if he projects upwards that by the time he turns 24 to 28, we're going to have him in his prime. It seems to, I'm going to say it doesn't work out as much as it should. Whereas you look at Davion Mitchell from Baylor, the biggest turnoff for him was that he was 22 years old. So someone who had played 4 years of college had that going against him, which you look back 25, 30 years ago, it was the exact opposite. And the more college you played, and you look at players, back then maybe even like Christian Laettner, who was praised that he played 4 years of college. And now it's the exact opposite. If you get your name out there and that people think you're going to be selected high, you strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, you can see that from this draft, Daniel, because the first 5 picks, the 4 players that came from college were all freshmen. So they've only had the 1 year at college. Pick 8 was a sophomore. I think I had to go way down in the draft to find an actual senior who was picked, and that was Jericho Sims from Texas.
Well, yeah. So I think, sorry, as I'm knocking over everything here in the study, it's all about now. If you're a general manager and you want to keep your job, I heard this, Professor, that there are these general managers that are in this position and it is the highest paying job they will ever have for their lifetime. So they need to keep that job for as long as possible. So as long as you can rebuild slowly, you keep going upwards, you're going to keep your job because your trajectory is going up. So you can always say, we've got these young guys, they're 18, 19, but, give me a couple more years and it'll all work out. So this seems to be the new flavour of the month, and it's really taken over the NBA at the moment.
It sounds like it's less brutal than coaching then, because that's saying about coaching, you're either sacked or about to be. Just ask Alistair Clarkson if you think anyone's untouchable, but it sounds like you can get some job security as a GM, Daniel.
Well, one of the craziest things there, Paul, was, Mike Budenhauser, who coached the NBA championship Detroit Pistons, that during the playoffs, in the second round, I think it was, when they're down 2-0 to Brooklyn, the word is that he's going to be fired. He's going to be out of a job. A couple of weeks later, they've won the NBA championship. In all likelihood, he's going to get an extension now. So he's gone from being out the door to being the most loved man in Milwaukee sports. Maybe behind Giannis, but he's up there.
Daniel, it seems to go against the trend, though, in sport that 18 and 19-year-olds aren't your future, because we just know about precocious 18 and 19-year-olds in all sports. It generally takes until, particularly a physical game like basketball, till you're about 23 before you hit your straps. So it just seems to be against science.
Yeah. And again, it gives you that opportunity to say, look, we're going in the right direction. Just wait on these young kids to come through.
Trust me.
And you look at AFL, for example, when people really hit their peak in that 22 to 26 age, and then you find the greater players and keep going on, past that. But really, because of the way it's kind of set up now, is that people can use this excuse to always delay what they're building. It's always the way that it's done now.
Mm.
Daniel, when was the last time, and I'm having a bit of a shot at my team here, when was the last time that a team had 3 selections in the draft and not one of those players is playing for them, finished up with them? And I'm talking about the New York Knicks. That would be the craziest draft day strategy I've ever seen.
I would say, Professor, they have bigger plans and they don't want to tie any money up to rookies. Because when you draft someone in the first round, with that position in the draft comes the money you have to pay them. So there's a set contract that comes with that. So they're obviously maybe trying to make sure they don't have that kind of money on the books, and the roster spots are available. Maybe they've got people in mind.
Yeah, it was say they didn't pick up Russell Westbrook. Obviously, he went over to the Lakers right before the draft started. But Mark, you're also now looking at the Knicks at $52 million, sitting there in salary cap with a whole bunch of players sitting out there waiting to sign free agent contracts starting, I think, August 2nd.
And if history is anything to go by, it's going to be so fun to see how they waste this $52 million and just give us absolute something to laugh about for the next 10 years again.
Well, did they make an offer for Aaron Rodgers, Dan?
No, but I heard Carmelo Anthony's still sitting out there.
Could it be the world's longest ever rebuild at the Knicks there?
They're actually rebuilding the rebuild.
How does Spike Lee go to the draft? Is he the general manager? Is he a pull the purse strings or something? Is it like
there are people in the celebrity world, Coutta, that can just do whatever they want, whenever they want. I remember it would have been about 15 years ago, the Melbourne Tigers were in the grand final, and I was doing the radio with SEN, and they said, go down and interview Ernie Dingo was there. And I was interviewing Ernie Dingo, and I said, something about Ernie, how did you get a ticket for this game? And he goes, I didn't. He goes, I just walked in backwards. I don't even know what that means, but he didn't pay. He just walked in, and everyone thought, well, he must have to be here. So nobody asked him.
We just said he's filming a getaway segment or something.
Paul, he might have had a lanyard on though, and we know where lanyards get you.
Oh.
Yeah. One of my favourite things was I used to have my press pass on, and then I'd go out after the game with the press pass still on, just so you can walk past security and get into the nightclub and then just take it off and let your night begin.
All right, Daniel, we might get you out of here on this one. Looking at the entire draft, was there anything that shocked you with respect to choice, selection?
The biggest thing was it was really considered that there was 4 players at the top of the draft who were the can't miss. And then with the 4th selection, the Toronto Raptors didn't take one of those 4 players, and that 4th player, Jalen Suggs, fell to the 5th pick, and Orlando got him. So Orlando, out of kind of nowhere, became the big winners on the day when they were thinking, we're just going to miss out here on one of these top 4 players. They were then able to get Schuks, and then at the 8th pick, they were able to then get Franz Wagner. So they kind of had a position where nothing was going to go their way. And then because of what Toronto did, taking Scotty Barnes at 4, things kind of just fell into Orlando's lap, and they ended up having a very, very good day.
All right, Daniel, perhaps before you go, any questions for the Gelding about punting?
Now, Gelding, you're going to be really happy here. Race 1 at Sandown,
Yes.
$1.90 winner.
$2
Can you
winner.
imagine what you would do with $1.90?
One thing is we've actually learnt, Daniel, over the years, you have to spend more than $1. I know it was very hard for you to get into that wallet of yours, but we did pick it as the bet of the day, and we actually got $2. And if you put a little bit more on than $1, it's 1 for 1. You actually make some money. You know, you can let go. You've got to open those purse strings, mate.
Try getting
let it
90%
go.
return in 3 minutes from IMG. See how you go.
When Daniel was born, his dad gave him a £1 note. I think you still got it, haven't you?
Gelding, how come you don't ever have those tips where there's like, the quad is like $155,000 or something? I can use one of those.
Yeah, well, Daniel, you keep trying to find that $155,000 quaddie because it's a thing called form. And they come up once in a blue moon, but you could spend a lot of money chasing them.
It's like when you give someone a winning tip and they say, can you give me another one? It's like, if it's that easy, I'd be in the Bahamas. Come on.
Yeah. Daniel, as professors finding out, you're better off backing a $2 winner than get back in a long shot and getting a piece of paper.
Does that answer your question, Daniel?
Yes, Professor.
All right, Daniel. Look, we really appreciate you coming on the show. We've missed you, man, and hopefully we'll find a topic that'll drag you back later in the year.
Professor, before I go though, I've got a question for Dan, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Dan, my favourite college football player, Cole McDonald, hasn't found a home at the moment. He was, drafted by Tennessee a few years ago, got waived by them, got waived by Arizona a few months ago, and now as training camps are going on, he hasn't found a home. Does he belong in the NFL? And do you think he's going to, for a quarterback, where would he fit in?
That's a great question. I mean, you start looking at quarterbacks that have already started getting injured. I mean, Carson Wentz just went down for Indianapolis, and they're trying to figure out how serious his foot injury is, I should say. And they just signed a quarterback. But there's if you're not in a training camp right now, you probably don't belong in the NFL. Let's put it that way, Daniel. It's a situation that you have talent, but like a Tim Tebow type, who won national championships, really wasn't the guy that could play the NFL football at that level. At the quarterback level, I think McDonald's kind of in that same boat right now. He's just not good enough to be the quarterback because he has to change positions to try to find his way in the NFL. That might be something he has to look at.
It's one of those ones. His last game with Hawaii in the Hawaii Bowl was just one of the most exciting games of college football you can ever watch. And so I put those highlights on quite often and just sit back and reflect on it because it's an amazing game.
Absolutely. No, it was a lot of fun to watch him play. It's just the NFL is just so much faster, so much bigger, so much stronger in so many ways that in college you can sometimes get around, poor defenses. NFL, there's really not a poor defense.
All right. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Professor.
Feel free to stay on, but I believe that you've got some other commitments. So
we do. Got to pop out.
All right.
Hopefully I can turn $1 into $2.
Well, we hope so too, Daniel.
Oh, Daniel.
All right, let's go to AFLW. And during the week, not only was there the NBA draft, but there was also the AFLW draft. And you were all over that, Sarah. Let us know what you thought about draft night.
Yeah, draft night looked amazing. We saw some amazing young talents coming through the program, and it went about the way that we discussed with Declan. So no big surprises here and there. But we did think that it'd be nice to do a bit of a profile on Richmond and St Kilda for the panel and just check out how they went for the draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a plan, because I'm sure the judge and the Gelding will want to know. Might even look at
Go
Melbourne.
Stella.
Over to
Go
you,
Sorry?
Stella.
So we'll start with Richmond then, start with Stella Reid.
Yeah.
Easy. Well, I guess going from Richmond with Stella Reid is Oakley Chargers premiership player, pick number 5, and someone that's going to provide some really nice consistency and really build that midfield depth that Richmond's going to be looking for. We also saw her fellow Vic Metro representative, Amelia Yastia, ready to go at pick 16. So they're going to have some really good strength going through there. They also went for mature ager in Megan Keeley at pick 48. And so she had a really great VFLW campaign with North Melbourne and is a really handy addition to the team. And Geelong Falcons winger Ingrid Hootsma. So it'll be a really last fresh selection at pick 50. And then we also saw them redrafting defender Akek McCure-Shot to the team as well. So we saw a really great draft from Richmond with those 4 players signing on and redrafting their 5th player. It looks like they'll have a really solid midfield going into the next season.
Well, it's something good for you to take into next season, Gelding.
Yeah, look, it's after a bad first year, as we've all seen, and they improved a bit this year, and hopefully they go along and improve a little bit more. Sarah, would we be an outside chance to make the finals, Richmond?
Definitely. You've got a lot of young talent coming through at the moment. While it might not be the next year, season that we see you guys having a really big impact on the finals campaign, but I definitely think in the future we'll see some of these really talented young women having a big influence on the AFLW.
Yeah, it'd be good to see them just win a couple more games and just continue this gradual improvement that's required to make them a stronger club. But
Exactly.
it was certainly going the right way.
Definitely.
Did Kate Shan redraft herself or not this year?
Not 100% sure, actually. I might have to go back through the notes.
Honestly, God. Mike's daughter. Online, I was done online, and it seemed from watching the AFL draft, the AFLW draft, there's a lot more content this year on the AFLW draft, the players, but then also the families as well. It was actually quite enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, it was a really nice draft to watch this year. And I think while the AFLW competition has been growing and their fan base has been growing, we're learning a lot more about the people who are interested in the competition and are related to the players. And it's building that fan base up a bit more. We're feeling a bit more connected to the players as we're learning about them. So it's a really good opportunity for the competition to connect with its fan base on a more family level that we see is a really important value in all sports, but especially in Australian rules.
Okay, Sarah, what about anything for the judge with St Kilda?
Well, St Kilda was quite quick with their influence in the draft, picking up 2 girls, Ella Friend at pick 4 and Ashley Richards at 12, and then passing on pick 36. So it was a very in and out draft for the Saints. But they've searched up their forward line with the selection of Ella Friend. She's going to be a great addition to the team, and she's 175 centimetres, so it'll be a really big help to Caitlin Grazier as well in the forward. And then Ashley Richards from the Dandenong St Kilda link, keeping it alive. The 17-year-old is going to be a really good person to rotate through the midfield and the forward line, so really strengthening up that group of girls in the midfield.
Thanks, Sarah. Is Ella going to play in the forward line, or they marked her out as a defensive player?
Hard to tell so far. They could go a bit of either way, but it's definitely they needed a bit more height in the team. So she might be a nice utility to be able to swap from one end to the other until they find exactly where they want to put her.
You might like this one, Judge, that the selection of Richards at pick 12. I went back through the mock drafts that I'd had a look at prior to the draft. Bit of a surprise. She wasn't taken in the top 40 in the 2 mock drafts I looked at. So hopefully she's good to be picked at number 12, Judge.
Well, they obviously see something there that, that not only that appeals to them, but fits in with that team. And this is the thing with drafts, that not necessarily the best players. It's often how that player fits into the team as they are now and as they obviously want to be. So that they see something in her. It's always wait and see. She's obviously very young, but that's just, as Daniel was saying, just wait and see.
Okay. Sarah, I know I'm biased with Melbourne, but given that they had picks 41, 42 and 45 in the draft, I'd give them an A+ for the talent that they picked up.
Definitely. They've got some really great players on their list, especially they had an amazing time in the trade period. So it looks like they'll be a really strong force in the next season. They've got their father-daughter selection, Georgia Campbell, at pick 41. So it's an absolute steal at that range and bring up enormous upside and potential to her post as a ruck forward position. And the D's went tall again with the rest of their picks. So picking up Campbell's Vic Metro teammate, Talia Gillard. So it's 189 centimetres to her advantage in the ruck, which is also versatile enough to roll forward a little bit. And then we also saw one of my favourite players in the AFLW, mature ager Alison Brown. So this will be her 3rd AFLW club, starting at Carlton and then moving to the Saints. She's coming out of the Demons VFLW program where she's settled in defence, but she's shown some really great versatility across her positions.
Yeah, the interesting thing, panel, is that unlike the AFL draft, where if you've got a father-son pick and you've got to match picks with if another club's interested, Campbell was tipped to be a top 10 pick. Melbourne picked her up at 41. Talia Gillard, in the mock drafts that I looked at, was picked at number 11. She slid all the way to 42. So basically, top 10 pick and almost a top 10 pick. You get it in the 40s. That's got to be a pretty good day for Melbourne.
Definitely. I think they've come away with a steal here. Definitely these 3 players are going to be athletes to watch out for in the next season. I think the numbers that they've been picked will help people. They'll be grossly underestimated. I think they're coming through as picks that probably should have been top 10 and 15, and they'll have an amazing season.
Yeah. And go on, Coutta.
Quick one for you, Sarah. Did Cunningham get? She didn't get redrafted, did she?
I don't believe so, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I was surprised that she obviously retired, and then has registered to be drafted. So I was surprised with that. But if she didn't get picked up, then hopefully she keeps playing footy at local level.
Definitely.
And if you wonder how those picks dropped so far, Geelong's certainly a surprise packet because they picked Zali Friswell at pick 7. In the drafts that I looked at, she wasn't in the top 40. And they picked at number 9, Gabby Featherston, who in the drafts I also looked at, she was at least picked 25 before she went. So Geelong have got 2 top 10 picks. They've invested in talent that people expected to go way later in the draft. So I think it's like anything. Teams probably want to go with known quantities, which is why some teams draft away their trade away their draft picks rather than going with the unknown. anything else surprise you, Sarah?
Not particularly. We saw some really great picks, I guess, across the level of the draft, but there was nothing that was too surprising for me. A lot of things that we discussed with Declan, there are a few picks that we expected to go a bit higher, as you said, and then girls that were picked really a lot higher than we thought they would for Geelong as well. Looking at Geelong's picks, it seems their strategy might be to try and stay a little bit more local and maintain the connection with the girls they've already got going through the program, to avoid girls not wanting to stay at the club and wanting to be closer to family. So they're already playing with the Geelong Falcons or in the Geelong VFLW side. The Geelong AFLW side might be the best spot for them.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Coutta, Olympic tennis.
Olympic tennis.
Certainly didn't turn out quite the way we thought it would.
I think it's turned out magnificently, hasn't it, Professor? The Golden Slam won't be won, which is a damn shame for Novak. And he's made a bit of a twat out of himself overnight.
Coutta, can I just replay what he said after that racket throwing incident? I think he would have just about won the discus with the throw of that racket up into the top of the stand. He said, "I don't like doing these things. I'm sorry for sending this kind of message, but we're all human beings and sometimes it's hard to control." You know, when I sit in court, that's the sort of defence that a lot of criminals put up. I don't like doing it. It's not a good look, but, you know, we're all human, so, you know, please forgive me. I'm a bit sick of Djokovic. What's your take on him?
Coutta, give us your real thoughts on him.
Get a long run up, Coutta.
I'm trying to find the right words to describe him. Like he's an amazing tennis player at the end of the day. Let's start with that. But he's probably one of the world's biggest tossers.
Literally.
What would have happened? So he threw that racket into the grandstand. What would have happened if that was at a Grand Slam where the stands were full?
Would have been on eBay.
He's got history too, don't forget.
Yeah.
Like
the same guy. He hit the lines person in the face. Same person.
But he tried making things look better and all this sort of crap, but he can't change his spots. He's just a tool. So at the end of the day,
would an appropriate penalty be to kick him out of the US Open, which will thwart his chances of a Grand Slam? Because in my opinion, that's what should happen. You can't fine him. What's $100,000 to him?
Nothing. And then, of course, John, he forfeited the mixed doubles because he had a sore shoulder. Now, was a sore shoulder from throwing the racket into the Tokyo Bay, or was it because he's played so much tennis, or he just couldn't be bothered?
Well, to take the other day that they were playing 5 sets at all the majors, these are only 3 sets. In the old days, and I go back to Margaret Court and Rod Laver knows, they always played the singles, mixed, and doubles, and they were all 3-set matches. So I don't think you could use that as an excuse, other than to say it is an excuse.
Yeah. So obviously for us, we won the mixed doubles bronze medal. So John and Ash Barty.
Just on that, Coutta, before we go on, I watched the game against Greece. With Tsitsipas. That was riveting tennis. Like that was just a great game.
Yeah, it was pretty good game. Obviously, John and Ash had a match point in there, but they were playing against what's the world number 2 or what Tsitsipas is, and the other girl that he played with, she's number 19 in the world. So super impressive doubles. Like it was genuinely good doubles to watch. The match before Ash and John played excellent doubles. So they played a match breaker to get into the quarters. Into the quarters. And I think they won at 10-3, but they just dominated the net, and it was actually really good to watch. But obviously, there's been issues with the heat, and I haven't got the quote in front of me, but I think it was it Medvedev or who said that he might. The umpire said, "Could he continue?" And he said, "I might die, but I will continue." Like, are they precious tennis players? Are they becoming more precious?
Well, the men's final today, Alexander Zverev against Karen Khachanov from ROC, not Russia, from the Russian Olympic Committee. Who's going to win that?
I think that Zverev will win that. It's a pretty quick surface and the like, so he suits his game. So, yeah, I could certainly see him probably winning it.
Did it surprise you that Ash Barty went out so early in the women's singles?
She played a poor match, and she'd be the first one to say that. But at the end of the day, coming off Wimbledon, she didn't play the way she would normally. So, and the other girl played, and John, you will remember this term, moonball tennis, where it was just in lobbing and sort of hitting it deep, and so it was an attractive tennis to watch. So Sam Stosur also played in the and she lost as well. But Ash and
does this raise the whole issue of tennis at the Olympics? I'm against two sports being the Olympics, tennis and golf, for pretty obvious reasons, and I just wonder whether realistically anybody cares, players and spectators.
I think there was a press conference, or sorry, there was an interview this morning with Ash and John talking about the mixed doubles. They love being there. They love the whole Olympic and everything like that, being able to represent their country. And John was asked where it ranks in regards to Grand Slams, and he said it's right up there, getting a bronze medal. Obviously won the Australian Open doubles with Henry in 2017. Is it an Olympic sport? Is probably the challenge at the end of the day, isn't it? Is tennis, golf, BMX, surfing,
skateboarding?
Skating. We haven't seen the climbing yet, have we? I don't know if the competitive climbing. Are they appealing to a new generation of people?
Well, Coutta, to that I'd say that surfing and BMX is far more appealing than long jump, which I've always thought was the most naff sport getting around. But I just think that the tennis and the golf, well, in the tennis they've got the Fed Cup and the Davis Cup, and that's tradition. I think the players just love the whole Olympic thing, which I totally get that. It's an amazing experience, but I just don't think they ought to be there.
Davis Cup has sort of died a bit of a slow death, hasn't it? Or it's not what it used to be.
Yes, yep.
And that's because the top players are driving change in that. Fed Cup's different. I think that is genuinely a nation-on-nation sport, and that's very well promoted. But yeah,
your Hopman Cup, are they still giving that a run?
No, I think the Hopman Cup might be being done. They're now doing some new teams event, but again, the Hopman Cup, Paul McNamee's baby. So I don't know. I've loved it, to be honest, John, at the Olympics, because you've been able to see players that you may not have seen normally. And the girl that won the women's singles from Switzerland, Bencic, she's ranked quite high in the world, but again, someone that probably doesn't get the accolades or the press that she should. And on that, Professor, she's now backing up today in the women's doubles gold match as well. So that might be some record if you win both.
You want to get Bruce McAvaney calling it. I thought he might have needed a moment last night. It was almost all too much for him.
The commentary, I'm trying to think who it was. Casey Delac was, I think, outstanding. But they've had a couple of mixed commentators. They had Mark Doran, who I'm not sure of his tennis background, but he wasn't great. And I had a couple of callers, but actually one of the things out of the Olympics, and Dan, we've got Channel 7 as the host of the Olympics, and they've got, say, 2 of their mainstream channels are showing it, but then they've got the app that has all the sports.
Yeah.
And so then we get the world feed and we get the world feed commentators. And you just realise how much better that is than listening to some of our commentators. Like Judge.
You're not going to have a go at some of our swimming champions, are you?
Matt Shirtington, he's not
no.
much job. I mean, Dan, they called him the human lunchbox. It wasn't because of where he put the sandwiches either. It's he's not much on the charisma front though, Sherbo.
No, I was going to say Ian Thorpe has been outstanding. His analysis of the Chalmers swim the other day and broke down the swim, the 100-metre swim. And then he said that the last 20 metres, the American didn't take a breath.
Yep.
And Chalmers took one breath, and that was probably the difference.
They've called him the Tony. Dan will get this. They've called him the Tony Romo of swimming commentators.
Definitely get that. It means the best of the best.
I agree with you. I heard last night Basil, Andy, and Gazy together. That is the most, I think the word is execrable, Professor. It was the most horrible bit of commentary, backslapping, since the days of Warney and Tubby and Slats and all the rest of it. Horrible.
They did say that, though, in the commentary, didn't they? They did say, Basil, you're doing some of your best work, didn't they?
About 3 or 4 times. It was just horrible.
Someone's going to have to check on McAvaney tonight when Rowan Browning qualifies for the 100 metres. It'll all be too much. He'll need a mop and bucket. I think it'll all be too much.
But Professor, can I make one small point about the Olympics. We've just won 2 more gold medals in a 4x100 medley and Emma McEwen again. Just to make the point, which we've made many times over the years, that's now 11 gold medals, 9 to the women and 11 in the water. Now, seriously, send women who do women's sports, water sports, to the Olympics. It is just extraordinary, and it's been growing over the years. But that's now 11 out of 11 in the water and 9 out of 11 to women.
Yeah, Judge, same thing here. I mean, I've been watching Australian women just beating the American women on multiple races tonight. I mean, we're seeing the speed 12 hours later than what they are live. So you kind of don't watch the results until you see it in the evening. Then it's somewhat interesting. But yeah, it's all guys calling the swimming and diving. And you don't have any women commentators, talking about the women's sports, which is extremely disappointing.
I mean, Dan, we touched on it earlier, but that Lily King who said we're going to win every gold medal, did she genuinely have that confidence? And was it a shock over there that the Aussie women are going so well, or is she just perhaps a few lanes short of a full swimming pool?
No, I think the American women are always confident. I mean, they're competing, and the Australian women are just beating them out. I mean, it's fantastic races to watch. They're just so exciting towards the end. But I think the American women, the men's swimming and diving, both on the men's and women's side, are very confident. I mean, we're very good at that sport, and usually we are in that gold medal hunt for every one of these races. So it is surprising sometimes when we don't get a gold or a silver in some of these races. That it's a disappointment. But I think that they are confident that they can get gold, and they're just, some of these races are getting beat out by 100th of a second. I mean, it's just crazy.
He's not American, but Johan Blake looking to his left to see Browning beat him in the heat. That was my highlight of the Olympics today. It was pretty much a what? Who's that?
Yeah, a white guy.
So perhaps
I'm in lane 1, beating me out. So that's my highlight of the games so far.
Just going around the panel, Dan, while we're with you, have you watched much of the Olympics, and what's been the standout for you so far?
Yeah, I've been watching. I mean, obviously we're 12 hours delay here, a little bit more than that. So you can see you wake up in the morning, you see the results on Twitter, but then you can watch them in the evening. You're surprised when the outcome is what they actually said it was on Twitter. So I am watching every night. A lot of the swimming is what we're watching here more than anything. That's on the main channel. We got multiple. NBC owns the affiliate, owns the rights here. They've got it on multiple cable channels, but the main channel NBC is running all the swimming.
And then Ledecky, the female swimmer that's is a superstar. Her battle with Ariad Titmus from Australia is absolute match swimming that you would actually pay to watch. And that competition, you hope that goes through to Paris, because that would be really amazing to see them in 3 years' time and hopefully still at the peak of their powers, competing against each other again.
Yeah, that's exactly what the American commentators have been saying. I mean, once Ledecky said that she'll be in Paris and hopefully she'll be in LA in 28, I was like, holy smokes, that's a long career for swimming. But she commented that she would really like to be able to compete in 28. So, not just blowing past 24, but taking it now 7 more years in this Olympic cycle. That's a long time, as you guys know, in swimming, in any swimming sport, to be active and competitive.
Gelding, have you taken in much of the Olympics?
Professor, surprisingly, I thought it'd be a very dull Olympics, but certainly taking a lot of interest in watching it. And I've got to say, this swimming team has been probably one of the best Australia's ever produced, if not the best. And the performance of especially the women in the pool has probably have to be rated up there as one of Australia's best performance at any Olympics, especially in away Olympics. Like, we seem to perform well in Melbourne and Sydney, but these women have been fantastic. I certainly like the kayaking and the rowing, Professor, which Australia seems to do very well in, and certainly looking forward to what we seem to do very well in is the cycling, the indoor cycling. So looking forward to that as well. So, yeah.
I was going to say, Gelding, as our racing guru, you'd love the swimming, because some of these swimmers are coming home like octagonal.
Oh,
flying home.
It's just, and what you get to see, and Ledecky, has been said, is an absolute champion. So Titmus has been beating her, and the strategy behind the races, you can actually see the strategy of it just pacing and just stalking her and stalking her and stalking her. And it really has been fantastic. And these girls now are up there with Ian Thorpe and that for medals won. So absolutely fantastic, Professor. What about yourself?
Yeah, I've been watching a little bit of it, Gelding. It's been very enjoyable. Of course, my sport of choice, water polo. The Australian men's team, they either do very well and win, or they play very poorly. There just doesn't seem to be any in between. Hopefully they'll make the medal round, but they'd have to improve a little bit.
Doing very well for semi-professional, Professor, against
yes,
professional teams.
Yeah, doing very well. And also Australia and New Zealand in water polo haven't had any competition over the last 18 months, whereas the European teams have still been competing against each other. So it's easy to see we're a bit short of a gallop. There's one other thing that I've enjoyed, and that's the rugby sevens. Very exciting match last night between New Zealand and Fiji in the women. It was just I was surprised that I became so engaged with it. But I'll tell you what, 5-minute halves, that might be the future for rugby union in the rugby sevens.
I was going to take you back to water polo there, Professor. I've had mates who've played at the highest level. You don't want to know what happens under the water, I can assure you. It's not for family-friendly discussion. It all happens under the water. They're brutal. Mates who played rugby union and water polo said rugby union's got nothing on what happens under the water there, Professor.
Paul, the Professor, has played water polo at a fairly good level himself, and has discussed many of the issues that you've probably just talked about. And is that the reason why they don't go to the underwater camera so much in them?
Well, I'm surprised he hasn't got a high voice there. From what I've heard, happens under the water too.
Yes.
Well, Paul, there's one thing I can tell you, and that is the first thing that they told me when I turned up to play water polo. They were surprised that I only had one pair of bathers to put on. And I said, why? I said, no, you wear two. Always wear two.
Yeah.
And I said, why? Because they'll get inside one, and that'll be the end of the game. So,
and Paul, I did offer him my cricket protector from many, many years ago, just in case.
All right, Sarah.
Professor, sorry, can I? For me, the highlight's been Jess Fox. Both of her events that she competed in. Obviously, lost the first one because of a 2-second time penalty. But her dad's commentary as well has probably made it. I think all of Australia was sort of cheering her home the other day when she won. And then her face, when obviously she's looked up at the scoreboard to see the time, I think everyone would have just been cheering their asses off at home. And I think that's one of the really great moments of the Olympics, and probably will be not idolised, but I think that will be a picture or an image that will last for many years.
I was going to say the father's lack of commentary was one of the most emotional scenes you'll ever see. I mean, just that he couldn't speak with just the sheer pride sums up the Olympics to me.
Yeah. And Gelding, you're talking about the rowing. Matt Hill has to be one of the most adaptive commentators within Australia. His call of the two wins was just bloody brilliant.
I like it. No, look,
Sarah,
Australia are doing very well.
Sarah, have you been watching any of the Olympics?
I don't think she's on, Mark.
Oh, okay.
She's taken off like Djokovic's racket.
Yeah, all right. Well, then we might go to you, Paul. NRL round 20. It's been fairly plain sailing until yesterday when Queensland whistled time, and suddenly the games that were going to be played weren't played.
Well, I saw the headline NRL chaos and COVID, and I thought, oh, God, someone's passed a hot dog across the balcony or something, or someone's invited an entertainer back to the room. But no, COVID has struck in a big way. Peter V'landys, though, our man who leads the game, makes Napoleon look like the Dalai Lama. He has somehow worked all night on this, along with the players, along with everyone. Spare a thought for the Rabbitohs. They just landed at Rockhampton, and instead of being asked chicken or the fish, they're on the tarmac for a few hours waiting to see what happens, and they were flown back to Brisbane. And some of the fans at Rockhampton, they'd already bought their hot dogs and beers, Professor, and the game's off. So there was a lot of unhappy fans there, but it was due to a snap lockdown. Queensland has a growing COVID crisis, which I think could shut down the entire competition. Let's hope not. They've somehow managed to reschedule 5 games into today and tomorrow. So it's great for sports fans today and tomorrow, and great for rugby league fans. But it's taken a lot of work, and I don't think it's going to take much more of the COVID numbers to shut down the whole competition. But there's only about 6 weeks to go. So let's please hope that it can be finalised, this competition.
All right. Thursday night, when things were in inverted commas normal, Roosters 28, Eels 0. The Eels' grasp on 4th position must look pretty shaky at the moment.
The Eels are plummeting, just absolutely falling out of the sky. So they started off the season very well. There's a problem at that team. No one's sure what it is. There's also a problem at the West Tigers. I can't imagine too many people tuning in to watch the Fly in the Wall documentary about a team that's turned into a car crash. They lost to the Warriors. It was an unlosable game, that one, where they were at, and they still managed to lose it. The Broncos have put a line through any hope the Cowboys had of making the finals. They're finding some form, the Broncos, and they're getting Rabbitohs Adam Reynolds next year. So they'll be okay next year, the Broncos. They might even sneak around the 8. They're too big a club to be as bad as they've been. So a couple of players on the move there. Professor Paul Vaughan, the barbecue host extraordinaire, is off to your Dogs. The reason for that is his great mates lives right near Trent Barrett. Barrett might have even seen some of the players arriving with the cases of VB in the middle of the COVID shutdown. But that didn't put him off. And Gus Gould, your new boss, must have approved that. Also, Anthony Milford, a guy who I tipped to be the best in the game a few years back, is off to the Rabbitohs. Very interesting move, but perhaps not surprising given that he was at the Broncos, or is at the Broncos. Wayne Bennett and the incoming coach, Jason Demetrio, next year for the Rabbitohs, both must have given that the thumbs up. As we know, Adam Reynolds off to the Broncos. So that will make the Rabbitohs a strong team next year. I don't really like Reynolds for Milford swap, but that's what's happening.
All right. Today's games, there's 3 in the book today. Knights and Raiders. Raiders are 9th at the moment. They really need to win this to try and break into the top 8.
Well, the Raiders have found some form, but it is the last roll of the dice. I actually like the Knights as outsiders. Kalen Ponga to star. You can have about 6 hours straight of rugby league if you're so inclined, Professor, starting at 150 today. The other 2 games, though, won't be too much chop. The Storm are $1.12 against the team coming second. The reason for that, the Panthers have more men down than Saving Private Ryan. So they're missing everyone. The Panthers, I've almost had a call up to play for them. So I can't see the Panthers getting anywhere near the Storm. Great news for Storm fans. Craig Bellamy and Ryan Pappenhausen have both re-signed. That's not coincidental. I think Pappenhausen was waiting to see who the coach would be, and they're both signed on for 5 more years. Surprising in Bellamy's case, not so surprising in Pappenhausen's case. They'll do a number on the Panthers today. They're just ruthless, the Storm.
Paul,
Go on,
sorry. The Bellamy one is an interesting one. We've talked about it regularly on here. 5 years tied to the club does not necessarily mean that he coached the club for 5 years. He could become that role that you've talked about, that director of football or coaching, whichever way you want to look at it, that gets a Billy Slater or a Cam Smith, whoever it is, right? Or a Jason Riles is the other one.
Yep.
Come back to the club and work with them.
What's interesting, because he is friends with Alistair Clarkson. I think they go on American leadership tours, or used to, and that doesn't work well for the Hawks. It all comes down, though, to whether you want Neil Perry behind you as you're making the risotto. If you're a new chef in the kitchen, I don't think that I'd be too keen on the man with the ponytail behind me watching my every move. It all comes down to whether a control freak, which you have to be to succeed as a coach, can turn that part of the personality off.
Yes.
And mentor a Billy Slater who has a very good footballer's brain. That's not an oxymoron. Or a Jason Riles who's signed, I think, at the Roosters, though. So there must be a plan there, and it must be better placed than Hawthorn, which was just an absolute shambles the way that all worked out. Because Bellamy wouldn't have signed if he thought he's going to struggle taking his hands off the reins.
And Paul, the importance, we talk about spines and that, but the spine, the key positions in rugby league are becoming more clear and more apparent the longer this season goes. And I'm specifically referring to Parramatta that have lost their halfback and lost all direction because a young kid, Jake Arthur, just does not have that ability as a playmaker. And I can't see them finishing top 4.
No, they won't. And look at the Panthers. I declared them to win it all, and then their number 7 goes down, and they've plummeted since. And Jerome Luai today, he has been asked to steer the ship around. He is a more a live wire type, jack-in-the-box type. He, I don't think, has the organisational skills to trouble the Storm, and you might find some of the Storm big boppers put a target on his head or elsewhere today, Jerome Luai, and he gets a bit of a bump early on because he is the only chance the Panthers have today, Jerome Luai, in the number 6, of getting anywhere near the Storm machine. And the other game, Professor, my beloved Rabbitohs are on. They're $1.07, so Daniel Eade type odds there. The one to watch out for the Rabbitohs, he's 18. His name's Davey, two V's in the Davey, Moale. 115 kegs, if you don't mind. So you won't miss Big Davey coming on. We should do a number on the Dragons, who are in free fall, and they don't have the don't be enough to back Matt Duffy. We can't even get that sort of investment on today, Professor, unfortunately.
All right, Paul.
Maybe we get on Big Davey to score. It'd take 4 men to stop him. Enormous bloke, 18 years old.
All right, Paul, the return of Monday Night Football.
Yeah, a lot of women are cursing that because it used to happen every Monday in my household. What are we watching tonight? You know what we're watching?
It was brilliant.
And didn't she enjoy that? Yeah, so your Dogs are on. An outside chance, Professor, $4 against the Titans. The Titans need to win to make any chance at the finals. They're lurking around the 8, so they should be too strong. But what else are you going to do at 6 p.m. on a Monday night, Professor? So you've got a game to watch. And then after that, the Sharkies, who are going to have a very good team next year, but not this year, up against Manly, who should be too strong for them. So unfortunately, I don't think they'll be two close games, but it is Monday night footy. So for that, we can celebrate.
All right, Paul. Panel. I sent you all a extract about Reggie Bush applying to get his Heisman trophy back from the NCAA, and they've said no. The reasoning behind him asking for it back is that now that student athletes are going to be able to receive cash benefits, that he believes that he should be forgiven for doing something that's now going to be legal. It's not only that question, though, and Dan and the judge, I'd like you to particularly look at this. It's more a question of, if the Supreme Court were to find that all of these rules put forward by the NCAA were outside the powers of the organising body to make, is it possible to break an illegal rule? Judge, Dan?
Judge, I'll throw it first. I mean, obviously, I want you to talk about this more than me, but this was the rule in place back when Reggie Bush played. So, it's like any law. The law was on the books. You broke the law during the time that you played. So to go back and rejudicate that, I don't think is fair. I mean, the Supreme Court just ruled on this because society has changed in many ways. Social media wasn't in existence when Reggie Bush played. That's part of this name, image, and likeness issue, is the impact you can make via your voice and your social media. So I just don't think the Committee on Infractions looked on it, which is an NCAA committee, said basically, no, we're not going to go back 20 years ago when Reggie Bush played and allow him to break the rules that were in place back then. Judge, I'll be interested to see your take on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Dan. It's it just shows this intersection of sport with the rest of the world. In a strict sense, he should be entitled to his Heisman Trophy because the law is invalid now. It was the same law then, and so the law was invalid then. But as you say, it was a different world then. Social media wasn't an issue. The authorities did the best they could. So I think there's a lot to be said for the authorities saying, for God's sake, it's all very well for the Supreme Court 20 years later or 10 years later to declare the rule invalid, but we were doing the best that we could. If this case came to Australia on the laws that we've talked about Australia, I think you're right. I think the decision would stick. But knowing America in the way that you love your constitution, you love your constitutional arguments, I suspect there'll be a real push for Reggie Bush to get his Heisman Trophy back. So what's this space? It was fascinating. We spoke about this 3 weeks ago, and now it's the rubber's hitting the road. I think the decision may well be changed in America, but it wouldn't have been changed in Australia. And that's what I think.
You're also in a position here in America that obviously if you take it to court, I think the NCAA would lose this one. It's just the way the court system works against the NCAA. I don't think the NCAA has won a major case that has been taken to court in that respect. And you joke about the Constitution. It is. If you lose in the district court, you could take it to the appellate, you'll win in the appellate, and then you throw it to the Supreme Court, and it's anybody's show. And the Supreme Court has already shown that they favor the 9-0 against the NCAA. So that could be a path that he looks to take.
Dan, I spoke about it during the week, but the Roe versus Wade, the most famous case in America, the abortion case, well, it's interesting that when that case was determined, finally, the mother of the child was 3 years of age. So these decisions have strange, what do you do now? The child's already been born. So it creates some crazy situations.
Gelding?
Professor, quick question for Dan. Back then, was it acceptable for students or college footballers and all that to receive benefit or, on the side or apart from their college fees and all that? Or was it strictly enforced that they couldn't get anything? Because what I would say here, in racing, jockeys aren't allowed to bet and they can be suspended if they have a bet and do that. But it's well known they've been doing it for 50 years. And, there's some of the bigger punters around. So when he was receiving cash or benefit, was that widespread or just a sole only person?
So you always hear stories underneath the table, Gelding, in that respect, that there's stuff, money being passed under a pizza box being delivered that has, benefits in it, those type of things. But it was against the rules with the NCAA. Pretty much you get your scholarship to pay your tuition, pay your room and board, pay for your books, but not much else at that point. I mean, it wasn't until 5 or 6 years ago that you got additional stipend, what they call cost of attendance, which is the difference is if you're a parent, your child's got to buy food or go home or do those type of things. They found it was anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 more that they could provide the student athletes in the cost of attendance. So NIL is now one that's just come on board, which allows for those boosters, for those local businesses to be able to do certain things to, provide benefits to student athletes. That was not an option until this year to be able to provide those extra benefits.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. We'll finalise today's program. As always, Gelding, what are your red-hot tips for today's Sandown meeting?
Professor Sandown on birthday of the Horse Day, and congratulations to Jamie Carr for being the premier jockey in Victoria with 104 wins. Of interest, Professor, her rides had earnings of $12 million. So with her 5%, she just earns $600,000 this year plus ex gratia payments. But Sandown today, Professor, big jumps day. As we said, we've got away early with Social Element at $2. Maybe Daniel can parlay that $1 bet that he has into race 4, number 2, Milwani Machine, at $2 in the race 5, number 1, Saunter Boy. Okay, Gelding, and also there's a big race meeting at Donald today, 10 races, and Craig Robertson, Sportzfan Radio's own, riding there. He was riding in race 2, Gold Logie. Unfortunately, he didn't get the Gold Logie. He got the Bronze Logie and ran 3rd. But his best bets for today, race 5, horse 1, Baron of Bedford. Yep. And race 7, horse 5, Simon Says. So you do worse than to follow Craig on those ones as well. Yep, certainly, Professor. So let's hope he picks up a couple of winners today down at Donald.
Professor, can I just point out, Emma McKeon has just equalled the greatest performance by any woman at Olympics. Extraordinary.
Oh, terrific result. And once again, the swimmers, Judge.
And females, let Debbie say. You take away the 8 women's gold medals in the pool, we go below New Zealand. So, keep that in mind, guys. We've been doing this for years, Professor, and it's becoming a real feature of the Olympics now, women in water.
There was a report, or there was an article this week that was discussing, does Australian swimming have a problem with leadership and toxic? And that was purely on the back of the coach's reaction. Is it Tipness's coach, Dean
Boxall? Yeah, what I can't see the problem with that. I blew up on Twitter about it, then I deleted the tweets about people saying it took the spotlight off her.
Yeah.
Give me strength. He just was enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone, like if you're a wrestling fan, you knew what he was doing. I thought that was just overblown, and from a group that was probably had some issues, Judge, the swimming has come through very well, and let's hope that they can continue to go forward.
I think we're lucky enough just to have a couple of world-class athletes, and their sport is swimming.
Yes.
So the next person to replace John Coates be an ex-female swimmer. You want to get some good culture into that place. That's a good starting place.
Well, the interesting thing now, panel, is that Australia now has 12 gold medals, so they've now moved to 4th on the medal table. Judge, you've always said that we bat above our weight. We seem to be doing it again.
Well, we certainly bat above our weight in women's swimming, Professor. I just keep coming back to it. You take out those 8, where does that bring us down to? About 4?
Yeah.
Well,
with that Titmus, coach, I felt for that official there who had the clipboard, because there's nothing in the handbook about a bloke about to rip his own head off and throw it into the pool. So she just didn't know what to do if he didn't stop. He looked like he's about to jump off the railing. Tell you what. Dan, we don't mind a bit of passion on this show.
Dan, we might finish with you. I see that the United States is second in the tally, 19 gold, China 22. Can you pull that 3-medal gap back before the end of the meet?
Yeah, I think you can look at track and field, Mark, as that starts to pick up. I think you'll see some more United States medals in track and field. That's where they might be able to leapfrog the Chinese in that respect. So we'll see. It's always been very competitive, and I'll be interested to see how the homegrown team picks up some medals here in the days ahead as well.
All right, panel, thanks for today's effort. Terrific. We've covered a fair amount of sport today. And until next Sunday, it's a very good afternoon to you all.
Stay safe, everyone.